So this book, ladies and gentlemen, is not just a story of Savarkar, but it is also the story of the alternative history of India's freedom movement. 75 years after freedom, we still don't know why we got freedom. दे दी हमें आज़ादी बिना खड़ग बिना ढाल साबरमती के संत तूने कर दिया कमाल बिना भाल बिना कुछ किए अपने आप आज़ादी आ गई. I mean, how is it even possible? And then he was a fiery orator, and he kind of critiqued every point that Gandhi made. He said, even to establish Ramarajya, Rama had to go to Lanka and kill Ravana. He did not sit in Satyagraha in front of Ravana saying, please Sita. Many times, as Mr. Narendra also mentioned, I think I should have dedicated this book not to my mother as I have in this book, but to Mani Shankar again. For all his idiosyncrasies, I think he really changed the course of my life, for which I am very grateful to him. In my maternal home, which was of Maharashtrian Brahmins, there was constantly some talk about Savarkar. There was also talk about the 1948 anti-Brahmin riots, about which I think very few of us would know. And in my growing up years, I don't remember in the CBSE textbook that I studied ever any mention of Savarkar, ever any mention of Port Blair or the other revolutionaries who suffered there, about whom both Dr. Babu Krishnamurthy ji and Narendra ji mentioned. I don't know how it is now, whether things have changed. I doubt it, because after 10 years we do have the same textbooks running very assiduously, and we have HRD ministers who proudly say not a line in our textbooks have been changed, as though it is a matter of pride, but it should be one of shame. But be that as it may, this monochromatic, linear, very simplistic version of what our freedom movement was, that's I think been dimmed into our heads. And popular media too, as you know, that famous Hindi film song, De Di Hame Azadi Bina Khadg Bina Dhal Sabarmati Ke Sant Tune Kar Diya Kamal. बिना भाल बिना कुछ किए अपने आप आज़ादी आ गई. I mean, how is it even possible? We never stop to think whether freedom was just granted to us as a gift, or was it through bloodbath, through sacrifices of numerous men and women who remain anonymous, who remain unknown to all of us. And one of the lead, in fact, one of the intellectual fountainheads of the revolutionary movement, if I can call him that, was Swatantraveer Vinayak Damodar Savarkar. After freedom, I mean today in 2024, we are able to have a mainstream discussion like this on Veer Savarkar. We are able to have an English publisher of the stature of Penguin coming forward to publish it, and other languages also publishing it. But go back to the 1960s and 70s, when he had almost become a persona non grata in this country. We have this case of the famous, the very, very renowned Pandit Hridaynath Mangeshkar ji, who was in All India Radio those days. And Savarkar, in addition to being a revolutionary, an ideologue, and numerous facets of his character, was also a very, very sensitive and accomplished Marathi poet. And among his poems, I was so pleased, as we were entering, we heard Ne Majasi Ne Parat Matra Bhumila Sagara Prana Tadamadala, and of course Jayostute Shri Mahan Mangale Shivaspade Shubhade. You get goosebumps even when you say these lines. Hridaynath Mangeshkar ji tuned Ne Majasi Ne, and all the Mangeshkar sisters, Asha ji, Lata ji and others, they sang this. And believe you me, for that he got a show cause notice from All India Radio, where he was working, saying, can you explain why you have taken this poem? And he replied very precisely in 2 lines, nice poem, good poet, reason enough to tune this and have it sung. And for that he was sacked from All India Radio. He lost his job. He's on record stating this in ABP Masha, the Marathi news channel. And today, since 2014, we say intolerance, asahishnute, has increased in India, whereas this was the tolerance we had for anybody who had a different point of view. And we see the same thing even in the manner in which I think our freedom movement was written. Immediately after freedom, since a lot of freedom fighters were still alive, the first government of India had decided to constitute a committee to write the history of the freedom movement. And they had commissioned someone as eminent as Dr. R.C. Majumdar, the famous historian, to write this history. Now, Dr. Majumdar said, I am not going to be a Darbari Itihaskar, so I will write the truth as it is. He had very critical views about Gandhi and the non-violent movement, and also a larger holistic view of freedom movement, which included the Sannyasi rebellion, the tribal movements, the armed rebellions, and all of that, and also Gandhi's movement, its pros and cons, the many lapses and achievements. Now, for that reason, the Nehru government actually sacked someone of the stature of Dr. R.C. Majumdar, and in his place, a very pliant, foreign IFS officer who had nothing to do with modern Indian history. He was an archaeologist and so on. Ambassador Tarachand, I think, he was put in charge of writing the official history of the freedom movement, and that was published by the Publications Division and the IND Ministry. So it was an open call to all the historians of the time that this is what the king wants. And so whatever, the historian, when a historian becomes a chef, ishtu haki, ishtu khara haki, ishte hing hakbeku, ade tara nanu adage ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಡ್ತೀನಿ ನಿಮಗೆ. That sort of a attitude when a historian has, the biggest casualty is history. ಇತಿಹಾಸ ಅನ್ನೋ ಪದಕ್ಕೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಅಂದ್ರೆ it thus happened, ಇದು ಹೀಗೆ ಆಯಿತು. So it has to be mentioned as it is, and in that particular aspect, I think that one of the biggest casualties amidst numerous others has been the way we look at our freedom. 75 years after freedom, we still don't know why we got freedom. We still don't know what is the reason why the British, who were holding on to this colony, the prized colony for so long, actually left and went. Even Dr. Ambedkar, in a BBC interview which is doing the rounds on YouTube and so on, he says that the main reason, of course, the Second World War, the draining of the economy, and the inability of the British to hold on to such an important colony were all reasons. But in his interview, Dr. Ambedkar says the exploits of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose and the Indian National Army was what was responsible for the British to finally leave India. Now, that aspect, when we talk of the Krantikari, the revolutionary movement, the way we have been taught that also in our textbooks, some footnote somewhere, few isolated incidents of bravery of some young men, misguided men, as even now they call, threw some bomb somewhere, shot someone dead, bravery, individual acts of bravery, they were taken to the gallows and so on. That is all that is told to us. But when you look at it deeply, from 1857, what is called the first war of Indian independence by Savarkar, when he researched about it and wrote his book, to 1946, which unfortunately to this day is called naval mutiny. It should have been called the last war of Indian independence, just as the Sepoy mutiny became the first war of Indian independence through Savarkar's efforts. But till that time, this 80-year period, there was an unending stream of armed rebellion all over the country. And in Hindi there is a proverb, "Laton ke bhoot baaton se nahi mante." So when it comes to the British government, I don't think peacefully you could keep pleading, please quit India, please leave, we will make salt of ourselves, please leave. I don't think that would have added to a major push to leave the country. They have given a few concessions, but the fact that they have to leave every time, if you see the 1909 Morley-Minto reforms, the 1919 Montagu-Chelmsford reforms, the 1935 Government of India Act, which actually opened the electorates for people to start voting and having their governments, and the final, decision to leave the country, they were all preceded by bloody acts of violence. Now, I'm not disparaging the non-violent movement. That was an extremely important movement to bring us all together as a country, as a nation, to give us that sense of nationalism and also awaken the desire to have freedom in the first place. But to attribute all of that to only this aspect, I think is very bad. So this book, ladies and gentlemen, is not just a story of Savarkar, but it is also the story of the alternative history of India's freedom movement. which I think becomes important to read in this context. And these are the two contestations when it comes to the idea of India. The two ideas that constantly clash with each other. And in this book too, I mentioned in 1909, Gandhi and Savarkar meet as young men in the India House in London, where he was the student leader, leading several people along with people like Shyamji Krishna Verma, Madam Bhikaji Kama, Madan Lal Dhingra, BVS Iyer, MPT Acharya from our own Karnataka, from Mysore Ayengar from there, Sikandar Hayat Khan, and so many others. So in that there were lots of talks that these people would conduct. And so Gandhi is supposed to have come and said there, it was a time of the Dasara. So during the Dasara, they were having these lectures, and Gandhi is supposed to have said, I will not talk about anything political, I will talk about the larger ideals of Ramarajya and also the importance of ahimsa in public life. Okay, very good. He finished his speech and came back, and then it was Savarkar's turn to speak. And then he was a fiery orator, and he kind of critiqued every point that Gandhi made. He said, even to establish Ramarajya, Rama had to go to Lanka and kill Ravana. He did not sit in Satyagraha in front of Ravana saying, please Sita. So he had to go there and slay the, king of Lanka. And he said, we are having this entire talk during Dasara, and in the 9 days you have the Devi in the Durga Saptashati. It's a bloodbath of all the asuras who, were oppressive. So, and in absolute non-violence is not a Hindu philosophy, it's not an Indic philosophy at all. Even in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna tells Arjuna that if your opponent is your father, your cousin, your teacher, anyone, if he is on the path of adharma, you have to pick up your arms and kill the person. So his idea to Gandhi then was, if you think the British Raj is adharmic, then the means don't matter, the ends matter. And we have to pick up the arms. And I think that is where the two men clashed. And in fact, Narendra about the Port Blair incident. Just before that, I think when Mr. Vajpayee was the Prime Minister, in the Central Hall of Parliament, you had the portrait unveiled of Savarkar. And diagonally opposite to that is Gandhi's portrait. No, I don't credit our politicians with so much intelligence that they thought through all this and said, okay, these are different ideologies. It just happened coincidentally. But nonetheless, I think these were the two poles of Indian history which will never reconcile. And they need not. We will have multiple ideas of India. There will be contestations, there will be fights, there will be intellectual debates. But I think what happened to Savarkar in the process is the extreme demonization, the extreme calumny that was heaped on him. As I said, even talking about him can make you lose your job. Who will ever take the cudgels to write anything about him? Today, I mean, despite a favorable, social climate, the kind of attacks that even I go through constantly, both within and outside India, is testimony of the fact that he still raises the cudgels. That is the power of this man's ideology, that 80 years or so after his death, still talking about him causes so much insecurity in everybody who is breaking India force. Somebody who is an unalloyed patriot. There is no doubt in even one cell of the body of anybody that this man was anything but a patriot, whose entire family sacrificed for this country. And today sitting in air-conditioned rooms or going on some, yatras to join the country, so to say, people make very loose comments about, oh, he was a traitor, we'll give certificates. Who are you to give these certificates to people? The very fact that we are breathing in the free, India's air is thanks to the sacrifices of all these people. But today, if you ask us, can we name 5 people who rotted the manner in which they did in Port Blair, in the Kalapani, other than Savarkar? I don't know. How many of us can even name 5 people, 3 people? It is very difficult. And forget even having, a sense of gratitude, not even knowing that these people exist. You can imagine what sense of ingratitude that we as a nation and civilization will then have. How can we move forward if we do not give, reverence and tributes to our ancestors who suffered and sacrificed everything for our today? So this book, and now through the translation, it is an earnest attempt to ensure that the story of Savarkar, the true story of Savarkar, reaches out to all of you. And I'm extremely grateful to Sahitya Prakashna, to Subramaniaji, to Professor Shekhar, and of course the entire inspiration behind this translation, Dr. Bhairappa, for ensuring that this book comes out to all Kannadigas. And every time there is some Twitter minister who writes long posts about Savarkar and how he was a traitor, I think now there is facts and figures to show everyone that that is not the truth. This is not a party issue, this is not a political issue. Savarkar does not belong to any political party. In fact, those parties which claim to be on his side too have, I think, wronged him as much as those who calumnize him. So it is not a party or a political matter, it is a matter of our country's history, our civilization, and the true story of this nation's freedom movement. Thank you so much for coming in such large numbers on Sunday morning.